Bernie Sanders is crushing it, regardless of what anybody else says. And I still think there's a lot of question marks over whether he can actually win a primary, but it's just amazing. Like all this endless talk about Joe Biden, will he jump in? And Hillary's people are letting us know that she's going to reveal her spontaneity strategy. And of course, the endless Donald Trump coverage, which is mind-blowingly entertaining. But we got Bernie Sanders out here being Bernie, speaking the truth, doing yeoman's work, and he's crushing it. Some polls showing actually big leads now in New Hampshire. Some polls saying, and granted, it's usually with Biden in all of these polls, but that said, leads in Iowa as well. So Bernie's doing fantastic. And now Bernie, of course, he needs to go to South Carolina. He needs to go to Nevada. He needs to introduce himself to a broader electorate. And of course, he needs to bring on Hispanics and African Americans, which is why we thank Black Lives Matter for sharpening and empowering Bernie's message on racial and criminal justice issues. I said, look, I'm sorry, not to toot my own horn here. I was interviewed on a podcast before Bernie announced, and I said, if he wants to run a campaign that is not just an excellent, brilliant anti-inequality campaign that I'm sure I'll vote for, but if he wants to actually really go into the trenches and see if he could possibly pull off some unbelievable upset here, he needs to be talking aggressively about criminal justice issues and systemic racism and drawing all of the connections between the loss of jobs, inequality, and corporate power, and racism and institutional abuses. That is the only way. And he's getting it. And he was just campaigning with Cornel West, who's endorsed him. They were just campaigning together in South Carolina, and it's going great. So David Axelrod, who is talking with John Dickerson, I believe it's on ABC, is damning Bernie Sanders a little bit with faint praise here. And he talks about Bernie's larger strategy. Let's take a listen to this.
Another candidate who gets the authenticity label is Bernie Sanders. He's also doing very well in the polls. Give us your sense of his future and what the obstacles and challenges are for him.
I think he's done a great job. I have to give him a great deal of credit. He's gone farther than anybody anticipated. And it is partly because he comes across as a guy who believes exactly what he's saying and is very passionate about it. But the tests get different, John, and they get harder as the race goes on. And one of those is, do you have the dimensionality to be president? And it's not just about making a speech, it's about how you relate to people. That's going to be a challenge for him. But the other challenge is the one I mentioned earlier. He doesn't really have a relationship with minority communities because of the state from which he comes. And you can see that in polling in states like South Carolina, Nevada, and elsewhere. He's going to need to develop that to become a competitive candidate down the line.
He is developing that. That's exactly what he's doing right now. Barack Obama was not polling well in South Carolina, even frankly up until he won the Iowa caucuses. Even he, as a charismatic and fascinating young African-American candidate, was still losing the African-American vote to Hillary Clinton. I understand Bernie Sanders is from Vermont. He's had some hiccups in campaigning, and he doesn't want to run a negative campaign. But look, Bernie Sanders wasn't backing welfare reform. Bernie Sanders wasn't backing aggressive and punitive criminal justice laws that punished and always disproportionately affect African American and Hispanic communities. He's been talking in a broad way about inequality and injustice that obviously also disproportionately affect people of color, but they affect everybody outside of a very narrow elite. So it's not going to be a stretch for him. That dimensionality is there. And if you're talking about substance, it's inbuilt. And when he goes out with that message and talks to new people, he's going to continue to defy odds and defy media narratives, and he is going to do better than expected in Nevada and South Carolina. And look, I don't predict Bernie Sanders wins. I think it's an incredible uphill battle, but he said everybody's been surprised by how well he's done. Well, I haven't. I thought the day he announced he's going to win New Hampshire. He's running a great campaign, yes, because he is authentic, because he does mean what he says, but he's also meaning the right things. He's talking about the major issues that confront us from the position of having been right about them since the 1970s.
My opinion on people it seems to be a lot lower than yours, so I did not think he would do this good, and not because really anything to do with what he was doing.
I thought he would be huge.
But
I
people can
really
surprise
did.
you, I guess.
People can surprise you. The Democratic Party is ripe for that kind of energy, and they're showing it.